hello, Dr. Pinar Mesci.
Hello, Bobby.
Thank you for joining us today on the Regen podcast for the UC San Diego Sanford Stem Cell Institute. I hear this is your very, very first podcast episode ever recording, ever interviewed.
Indeed it is. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation, Bobby.
We're happy to have you. I can't believe this is your first podcast interview with everything that you do in the industry.
Me neither, but you have to start somewhere, and this is very well fitting.
You remember when you get famous that I was your first? So, take me on tour somewhere, please. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time. It's really glad to have you here, and it's glad to have you back. We're lucky to have you live in Southern California. And so, can you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about your current role and what you're doing?
Of course. So I'm a senior program manager for in-space biomanufacturing at Axiom Space. Basically, I'm overseeing a portfolio of research programs that are geared towards understanding how we can leverage microgravity to make unique products that we cannot make here on Earth to benefit patients everywhere here on Earth. So those include things like tissue engineering, 3D bioprinting, DNA-inspired nanomaterials, of course, cancer research with UCSD, with Dr. Jameson's work.
Mm-hmm.
It involves stem cell manufacturing and disease modeling as well.
Right. So why, for those who are listening and may not have listened to some of our prior episodes yet, why are we doing research in space? Why can't we do this on Earth?
Well, because a lot of the questions that we wanted to solve with science here on Earth, the easier questions, most of them have been solved. Now stands the bigger questions that are much more difficult to answer, such as, for instance, cancer research or neurodegenerative disorders. As you may know, if we're looking at Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, there are currently no cures for those patients. There's only some medicine to alleviate sometimes some of the symptoms, but they really don't work that well to extend or improve life expectancy of those patients. So microgravity helps us look at the same problem from a different lens. So when you remove gravity from the equation, the way that cells behave or the way that they interact with each other changes. So that gives us an opportunity to intervene and find better novel therapeutics that we wouldn't be able to discover here on Earth.
That's pretty amazing. I would love to know who figured that out at some point. I don't think they knew that in the 60s when we were doing the space race, right?
During even the shuttle program, some of this cancer research was so important that people had sent some tumor organoids, of course not models that were as developed as they are currently, for instance, at UCSD, but they have observed some of the things that we are observing currently with our current technology as well, like organoids that are growing much faster. So those kind of things have been previously, to some degree, a little bit observed as well, even during shuttle programs.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you talked about the shuttle program. I mean, space travel and space exploration and space research has definitely progressed and changed. We've retired the shuttle program. We're now on a rocket launch system. We have the International Space Station. That is being decommissioned here in a few years. So talk to me a little bit about that and where you know the industry is going and what role you and your company are playing in that.
Of course, what a great question, Bobby. So yes, the ISS have been around and has been continuously crewed for the last 25 years, basically. And that helped us get some of these initial results, at least, or proof of concept studies. But the problem was the cadence of flights, the ability to be able to do repeated research to get very good, robust baseline data sets. So then that will inform us to see where we should go. So for instance, one of the questions that I always get since I started working at Axiom is people are wondering, has this experiment been ever done in space? Can I check that? The answer is probably, but unless it's published or someone from that group who has conducted that research, you're never going to see that because those results very rarely get published because of this lack of being able to repeat it in a rigorous way.
Yeah.
So what we have been doing at Axiom Space is really focusing on scientific data and to see in these different areas of biomedical field, the areas that have the highest potential, like cancer research, like stem cell manufacturing, for instance, to see can microgravity help with those? And then if so, build a data set so we can build upon. So we're now at the cusp of we've generated that data set, so we can go towards pilot scale manufacturing. We can, in very near future, go do full scale manufacturing on commercial space stations. And you touched the point of ISS being decommissioned. ISS have been amazing to generate all these results and help us get a lot of insights on this science, but it was never built to do manufacturing or research in a very high cutting edge technology. So that's what commercial space stations, the transition to commercial space stations, are going to be able to enable. And this is where Axiom Space, my company, comes in. Mm-hmm. So we have the exclusive access to be able to dock directly onto the ISS. So our first module is going to be able to connect directly to the International Space Station, where we're going to be able to ensure continuity of research that is already being conducted on the ISS, and then eventually we're gonna separate from ISS, and then have our own module that's gonna have not only crew quarters but also a full module dedicated for research and manufacturing.
So what you're saying is we have a plan.
We do have a plan.
It's amazing what happens when people actually really proactively think about things well in advance, to be able to say, here's what's going to happen. Let's solve the problem and let's be ahead of it. It's amazing, right?
Exactly.
If only everything in life worked that way.
We're living in a very exciting time, and I'm so happy that I can see this from the Axiom side, but also while being able to continue working with groups like UCSD and some others, Cedars-Sinai, National Stem Cell Foundation, and many others around the US and around the globe, really, because well, we haven't touched on that yet, but I'm getting ahead a little bit.
No, there's no ahead.
In addition to our commercial space stations, our company is really about enabling access to low Earth orbit for anyone and everyone around the globe. And while we're manufacturing our commercial space station, we have been also conducting private astronaut missions to the International Space Station. That not only helped other countries who may not have a space program access low Earth orbit, but also generate more data. And actually, I'm proud to say that to this day, we've conducted 4 of those. The last one that just came back in July. And actually, Dr. Jameson's team, as one of the few people who have flown, and maybe actually the only group who has flown in all AX missions, and they have generated tremendous amount of data. And I'm so glad to see that they're going to be publishing all of those soon.
Absolutely, yeah. We're looking forward to the results on those.
Yes.
So you talked about privatization of space and people being able to go up in space. Do you want to go up in space?
I guess this is a tricky question. I would not, just because I'm afraid of roller coasters and just the effect of the rocket launch forces really scare me.
It's a really big roller coaster. Yeah.
But I will say this. The only time where I was like, oh, maybe this does look actually very, very cool, and maybe I could do this. This is something that I would really like, is during AX2, we were watching mission operations, and Rayana Barnawi, so the first Saudi woman who we sent to space stations, she was the 600th woman, along with Peggy Whitson, they were conducting some research experiments in the life sciences glove box. So basically it's a hood that we have on the International Space Station. And she was with the pipettes and the plates and everything that I'm familiar with. And she was doing that with such ease and such calm. And that's when I was watching her, I'm like, this looks actually pretty cool. Maybe I could do this.
Yeah, maybe. So, Axiom, take note. Like Pinar wants to be a future astronaut. So,
Potentially.
That's pretty exciting, though. I mean, I never thought in my lifetime, growing up with the space shuttle, system, and watching folks like Sally Ride, the first teacher in space, like that was a big deal,
From
right?
UCSD as well.
Yeah, right. And a little UC San Diego connection.
Yes.
Speaking of, you're a UC San Diego alum.
Yes, I am.
Tell us about that.
Well, this is where I think life is really sometimes the connections that you make is really interesting. You think that you have one path already figured out, but then it takes you somewhere completely different. I started at UCSD in 2014 in Dr. Alysson Muotri's lab as a postdoctoral scholar. I was coming from France, I had just finished my PhD in neuroscience. I had worked on neurodegenerative diseases. The one that I was working on was amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a very devastating disease, using rodent models. But then I quickly realized maybe I should add a little bit to my skill set, because mouse models are great, but the induced pluripotent stem cell technology was coming up. I mean, it was already like somewhat widely used, not as much as today, but I was like, oh, I should really learn that. And then who better than Dr. Alysson Muotri? He had done some very cool papers to date. He had actually one paper on ALS that I had read when he was in Rusty Gage's lab at the Salk Institute. So I was like, oh, maybe this could be a great lab. And he was not even looking for a postdoc. I remember I met him in 2013 SFN meeting, the biggest neuroscience meeting that took place in San Diego. After one of the panels that I think he was chairing, we had like a 15-20 minute talk, and he's like, well, why don't you come to the lab? And then I think it was the next couple of days or the next day maybe, I went there, and I was absolutely blown away by the research that he was doing. He was basically working on Rett syndrome using iPSC-derived neurons, astrocytes, glial cells, all these supportive cells of the brain. So I was fascinated by that. And so he was kind enough to take me to his lab. I stayed there for almost 10 years, actually.
Wow.
I was always like, I still love academic research. I think it's really amazing. And being in his lab really enabled me to be able to work on a variety of different types of diseases. So it wasn't only Rett syndrome, but I also worked on other autism spectrum disorders. I developed my own project, and I developed the protocol for microglial cells, which are the immune cells of the brain. At that time, there were no protocols for those. And he was actually, when I brought this idea to him, he's like, I'm giving you 6 months to make this work. If it doesn't work, you go back to your other stuff. I'm like, okay, challenge accepted.
And it worked, didn't it?
It worked in 3 months, actually. I was quite proud of myself.
All right. You showed him.
And then later on, around 2016-17, one of the projects that he got interested was trying to see how we can leverage microgravity to make better models for human brain, basically. And I really essentially begged him to put me on that project. At that time, it wasn't a very active project in the lab. So again, he was like, okay, so this is a side project for now. We'll just make it work. We were working with Space Tango, so that really enabled me to get into the whole microgravity research and how space flight works. And honestly, I learned a lot about hardware design, working with others from industry, working with engineers, which is very different from working with biologists.
Right, and very different than working with academia. So how did you make that transition?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I always loved academia, but towards the end of my, role as a senior scientist in his lab, I think I was coming to an impasse a little bit, where maybe things weren't going the way that I would hope. So I was looking into industry, but again, I was never into going to pharma or biotech. That never really got my attention. And then through one of the connections I had made at Space Tango, Jana Studemeyer, that I know you guys also interviewed, she was like, well, I'm at Axiom Space. We just got all these programs, and I need someone like you who not only knows space portion, but really essentially the science, which is something that is really missing currently in this industry, because traditionally it's been mainly engineers or very traditional program managers that the industry had. So to her, having both sides, like knowing the science very well, but also the space flight, was a unique combination of skills. And obviously I jumped to the occasion. And then I remember when I had to tell this to Alysson, of course I was heartbroken because, I was going to leave his lab. So part of me, of course, wanted to stay there. But he told me, I'm sad to see you leave, but also this is so cool. So if someone's going to leave my lab for something, this is the one. So he was very happy and supportive.
What an opportunity. What an opportunity. And then you're still working with us. You're still working with UC San Diego, Sanford Stem Cell Institute.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be doing that. I mean, Of course, I was familiar with Dr. Jameson's lab and her people, her team. I remember when we first acquired the 10x Genomics, the single cell sequencing system, me and Jessica, we tested it together with Elza Molina back then. She was directing the genomics core. So yeah, we did a lot of these testings and things like that in the lab, even though our research was not necessarily overlapping at that time. But yeah, so then when I switched to Axiom, knowing that I had still would continue working with Dr. Jameson or getting to know more about her research actually was really so motivating to me and exciting. And it gave me also a point of familiarity because Axiom Space was is my first industry job essentially. But so still working with people that I knew from before really gave me a sense of, okay, so these are people that I know. I know some of their science, but not in depth at that time, of course, and then continue from there. So it really helped me.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing story, and it's interesting where life takes us, right?
Oh, absolutely, Bobby. I would have never imagined in a million years that I would end up in this industry. I was born and I grew up in Turkey, and while I think in the United States people are more used to shuttle programs and things like that, in my lifetime we never really had anything like that. Like the moon landing had happened before, but everything else was not necessarily something that we would see on TV or hear about it or really think about. And one of the points that I'm really proud of at being at Axiom is really during AX3 we actually flew the first Turkish astronaut. So that was a moment where I was like, okay, so this is really why we're doing this. And I was personally touched by that. I was really emotional during that launch, that rocket launch for AX3. But one thing that he had mentioned, so this is Alper Gezer Avcı, the first Turkish astronaut, was similar to my sentiment. Growing up, I would look at the sky, but that would be like a dream for others. I would never, allow myself to dream more than that. That could never be us. But now he has given that vision to all the younger people in Turkey. And now actually when I go back there and I talk to people, this is something that people bring up as if it was naturally in their,
right.
Future. And it is.
And it is. It's actually tangible.
Yeah. Exactly. So...
Yeah. That's amazing you have such a personal connection to it.
Yeah.
So you were so very passionate about your work and the things that you do and where you've been and how you got there. What keeps you motivated to continue to do this work?
Honestly, Bobby, I think enabling access to space for countries like mine, it's one of the portions that I think I knew how important it was, but I think until I was touched personally, I didn't realize how big it was. So I think that's really something that keeps me motivating. But beyond that, it's really science. It's been always about science, I think. Even though I'm a senior program manager, I will always be a scientist first. And some of the things that I have seen during our AX missions, and then even with our partners with some of these programs that I mentioned, it's quite remarkable the types of science that is coming out of it. And of course, part of it is also personal. One example that I'm going to give is, again, with Dr. Jameson's work. So she has sent, with our missions, tumor organoids to space. So these are we've sent a number of tumor organoids, colorectal cancer, leukemia, in the latest mission, glioblastoma, ovarian cancer, secondary AML, and metastatic breast cancer. And then while we're doing all these mission operations and we're imaging these organoids on orbit in real time, so we're up in the middle of the night with Dr. Jameson, Jessica Pham, the mission specialist, who has been doing a tremendous job. And I feel privileged because I get to see firsthand the results in real time in microgravity on how these organoids behave. And one of the things that I remember during AX3 that Dr. Jameson said was, it was our first time sending primary patient cells from metastatic breast cancer patients. And we're looking at these tumor organoids, and she said, oh wow, they never developed this way in a dish. This is exactly how they would form in a patient. And at that moment, I was like, wow, this is why we're doing this. And this is going to lead to discovering the correct drugs, or the drugs that will have the better chances of working in patients. I mean, my own cousin, unfortunately, he passed away from colorectal cancer a couple of years ago. He was only 39. And I mean, I know everyone has some stories to some extent, near or far in their family. So I think this kind of research really, seeing it firsthand that actually microgravity does something to these systems, and we have better chances of finding drugs. I think that's one of my biggest motivations. One of the other things that we have done with her not only is to looking at these tumor organoids in microgravity, where they seem to be forming in a much closer way that how they would develop in patients, was also to look if we can do a drug screening, not necessarily a drug screening, but drug testing in microgravity. So we have what we have done during AX2, AX3, and AX4 was to test one FDA-approved drug, fedratinib, and then one drug that the team is developing, rebexinib, to see if they would actually work on these tumor organoids that grow faster in microgravity compared to the ground. And to our surprise, actually, the one that they're developing, rebexinib, worked better than the one that is FDA approved. So we tested that again on AX3, and now on AX4, that drug actually flew as a drug that has an active IND, investigational new drug status, which is amazing.
Especially for UC San Diego and the Stem Cell Institute.
I mean, of course, and so this now gives us a platform to be able to screen drugs that have better chances of working in patients, especially when they have accelerated growth and all this metastases. So these are real examples on how microgravity can be leveraged. So I think in a couple of years, not even a couple of years, in like maybe 1 year or two, we're going to see more of these results in other areas of biomedical field as well.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your insights on why science is important and your connection to that. It's a question that I ask all of our guests, and I didn't even have to ask you, so there you go. Yeah, that's great.
Thanks, Bobby.
You mentioned before you grew up in Turkey.
Yes, I did.
And you've spent some time in France.
I did.
So you have an international lens on things. And with the privatization of space and you know, first Saudi Arabian woman to go into space and a Turkish astronaut, you know, the EU Space Act, what do you foresee happening globally with privatization of space? What opportunities are there that may not have been there even a generation or a decade ago?
Oh, absolutely. I think this gives us a tremendous potential of being able to foster collaborations that may not have existed before. And one really concrete example I'm going to give about that is, last year when we had the UCSD Stem Cell Symposium, one of the guests was actually Rayana Barnawi, so our first Saudi woman astronaut. And along with her was the chair from the KAUST University and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And what happened was amazing because that gave them an opportunity to know the people around here in this community, and of course meet them in person. And naturally, because everyone is a scientist as well, we have now a lot of ideas about collaboration, potentially, doing programs together, internships, or even creating new hubs with Axiom's involvement as well. So this is just one example that we have with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but these types of private astronaut missions and also international collaborations will enable people to work with US scientists as well, and then advance basically research and discovery to a point where we can hopefully come to the manufacturing and commercialization aspects much faster for patients. It's
an accelerator. Space
Absolutely.
is an accelerator.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. You've talked a lot about what you're passionate about and excited about. What are you most excited about on the horizon in the future for the industry?
Honestly, I'm excited to have commercial space stations with cutting-edge technology that can match a little bit more what we have on the ground, just so we can do the science and everything a little bit faster. Just so I can give a little bit more context. Currently, of course, we're using the International Space Station, which has been amazing. It has a lot of capabilities, a lot of time that we can have from NASA astronauts and so on, and that has been really helpful. But in the next era, we will need to have essentially tools that everyone is using here in the lab, and not necessarily specific flight hardware that might introduce other variability into the results. Because when you're working with a specialized equipment that is not widely used worldwide, then you might run into other variability problems. Right. So you don't know if your results are really coming from microgravity or they are due to the fact that you're using a different type of equipment, for instance.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we're trying to mitigate. Another aspect that we really need to enhance is being able to have more real-time on-orbit analytical tools, meaning while we're up there, being able to generate results and not having to wait to get our samples back and then start an analysis that can last for many months. If we can have results already in space and have the ability to iterate based on those results in real time, that will make everything much faster. So getting to results much faster, discoveries much faster. So that's going to be an important point as well. And then the third aspect that I'm going to add to that is having astronaut scientists, which is also very important, because some of the research, everything that we're looking currently in the biomedical field, they're all very specialized fields, and they require expertise that takes sometimes years to acquire. Like, let's take stem cells. I've been in Dr. Alysson Muotri's lab, and it took us years to perfect some protocols. It really needs that personal or like that expertise to be able to generate good results. So of course we train our astronauts to the best of our capability, but sometimes we may be limited in doing some more complex experiments.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is where having astronaut scientists can really make a difference. And in fact, we've seen a great example of that with, again, Rihanna, because she is also a biologist, stem cell biologist, and everything that she has done. So she has done one experiment for Cedars-Sinai, which was basically the first that led to a publication actually last year, at the end of last year, was to do the first transfection, so introduction of DNA into human induced pluripotent stem cells and human fibroblasts, so skin cells. And we also saw that the cells formed 3D structures on their own, which was something that was also observed with a couple of others, but we've seen that with human stem cells as well, which was great to see. So all of that was enabled by how good Rihanna was, because these are very sensitive cells. They really require some expertise in being able to juggle with them. So we were very thankful for her.
Absolutely, yeah. We're looking forward to having her at our symposium this fall. Yeah.
She's looking forward to it.
Yeah, and you're coming, yes?
Yes, I am. Wouldn't miss it.
I'm happy to hear that. So I'm going to make a deal with you. When you are the scientist that goes up into space, I will attend your launch. How about that?
All right, Bobby. All right. Yeah, we'll have a deal.
Thank you. Just got to make sure Axiom invites me. Yeah.
All right, we'll make sure that happens.
Thank you. Thank you, Axiom. I appreciate it. One final question.
Yes.
What advice would you give to the next generation of researchers, students, kids, especially young women, people that may not be the traditional scientist mold, and they're thinking, this is all so cool. How do I get into this? What do I do? What advice would you give to them?
Oh, what a great question. And this is also something that we're very much supportive at Axiom Space, and I know UCSD is absolutely as well. The time is really coming. I may be one of the first people who got into this intersection, but I certainly won't be the last, and I can only imagine that there's going to be more and more opportunities like this. And in fact, UCSD, of course, has iScore, so this hub that is really dedicated for stem cell research in space. Cedars-Sinai have just established their own center. Berkeley has one. On the East Coast, there is, of course, Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine. They have their own hub. So all these hubs are getting created, and they are all very supportive of this workforce development, of having scientists, astronauts, so really getting them not only knowing how to do good science, but also the spaceflight portion, so we can have more and more people like myself in the field. And what I would really tell them is just stay curious and never. Science integrity is everything. Honestly, we should not be doing the science needs to be still done at the highest level and with excellent rigor, so then we can actually use those results for future experiments. And then I guess in my own personal experience, I found networking is also very important, and keeping your connections alive is very important. You never know where life is going to take you, like you were saying, Bobby, and having all these connections alive, and I think that's very important. And I guess one last thing that I find very interesting is not only stay curious with the science, but stay curious with the world, because everything that is happening around the world, it may seem far away from your home, but it affects all of us. So I think having a pulse on different things that are happening around the world, just being curious in general, is always good. So then you can see how it impacts, because it has a domino effect sometimes, or most often.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
That's fantastic advice. That is fantastic advice. Thank you for coming on the podcast today. Again, I'm so happy that I was your first podcast interview.
Me too. Yes. This is full circle. It's so special to me.
Aww.
This is where I started, and this is where I'm still connected to. And
absolutely.
It makes sense that my first podcast is with UCSD.
That's fabulous, and we will have you back.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely have you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If anybody has any questions or wants to learn more about what we do, you can visit us at stemcells.ucsd.edu, or of course look up Pinar at Axiom Space.